Aliens was the last film Simon and I covered in a 4K versus 35mm video. This time it's the turn of the Terminator, and Simon suggested we include assembly of the print at the start. So is this where you made it up, on this viewer?
It is indeed, yeah. My bat's just packed up for some reason. I've got to get round to fixing that up.
But that's the last reel ready to go on, is it?
Yeah.
Right.
I'll double check the leader. So here we go. This is part 5. So what we double check here is making sure that this is actually the right leader attached to the beginning of that reel, and you can see that the projectionist before me has cut it a couple of frames in, so we know for sure that that leader applies to that because it matches.
Right.
If it didn't match, it might be that the wrong leader has been put against the wrong part of the film, which again can happen. What I'll try and do is peel the leader off in a way that doesn't damage the film too much. There's no easy way of doing that, but generally it works.
Yeah.
So this is reel 4, so everything goes back in here, so that when we come to put it back in the cans, we've got everything that we need all in one place. So I'll tidy that up in a minute. Splicing. Film gets joined together there. Splicing tape across there. Just press it down. And then when we put this part of it down here, pressing on this lever cuts the tape and punches holes in it. Once we've done it that side, we'll turn it over, pop it in the splicer and do it on the other side just to make sure it's strong.
So it doesn't break as it goes through the gate.
Yeah. I always put a China graph on it so that you can actually find the right splice when you come to break it down again. Invariably towards the end of a film there might be several splices, and trying to find the one that's correct isn't always straightforward.
And because this is a 1:85:1, that China graph doesn't show.
No.
So it doesn't show on the screen.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see from here, one of the methods that projectionists in the past have used to identify the end of a reel is by using just Tipp-Ex around the reel join, which highlights it when you come to breaking it down. But I think there was several ways of doing it, but that's my favoured way anyway.
Ready to go.
Ready to go.
And so it's off to the cinema, and joining us are some of our fellow film collecting colleagues. Following Simon is Mark Stuckey, and then Ben Wales, and finally Steve Rowley. Ben spent a couple of decades in cinemas and projected everything up to 1570 IMAX. Mark has had a long career in the British film and television industry and is currently one of the experts in the long-running successful show, The Repair Shop. Steve is another of our most experienced cinema projectionists, now retired, but not really, because we won't let him.
Not actually an unboxing, this one, is it? But there we go.
Just the one disc in this pack. I think the Steelbook's got the Blu-ray as well, but I'd have to check that.
I'm quite excited by this, actually, to see to actually see what's been done to the disc. So this is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, so I've had a sneak peek at it, and I think it's less over-processed than Aliens, but it'll be interesting to see what everyone else thinks about this and what we think about compared to the 35mm.
Yeah.
There has been a bit of controversy about this 4K release of the Terminator. It did look somewhat artificial in places, but I had quite an extensive look at it at home the following evening, and unlike Aliens, which looked better on Simon's system, the Terminator looked better on mine. All our systems are different. The new Dolby soundtrack was exceptional on both. I think we were both rather impressed with that 4K,
yeah. One of the things I think, John, we were chatting about was how easy it is to put a film on that looks brilliant. And for us, we like the misery of putting a film on and the nuances of what we have to do to make it look good, which is a different aspect. And I think that's what we've grown up with as film collectors. But from the point of view of what we've seen so far, fantastic, yeah, really good.
And I think when it comes to us looking at a film, I think we're more accepting of things that we might not think are quite right, and they're just part of watching a film.
Yeah.
Whereas with the new 4K market, I think many people are expecting that the films originally were all perfect, and therefore the disc should be, and it's never the case.
I mean, just listening to that soundtrack, the way the sounds were being placed around the room, brilliant. The 35mm print is only a mono print, and that's how it was released. So again, going back to the conception of it when it was seen in the cinema, again, different experience. Whether that changes our view on it, I don't know, but we'll see. I'm looking forward to it now. I always put a polyester leader on my old print, just because.
Good idea, yeah. On my 4-track mag, it's all got double leads on it.
Sorry.
Got the start of the gate there. Hopefully sync up the little mark here on the leader, the little diamond gives the projectionist an opportunity of syncing the sound correctly, although it's not absolutely crucial. But that goes against the sound reader there, so there is separation built into the film where the sound is actually ahead of the picture.
Simon has quite an extensive collection, and he put a couple of very suitable trailers on the front of the film. The first was the original teaser trailer for the Terminator, and then Terminator 3.
Where men must hide underground, has come a machine wrapped in flesh.
That wonderful Orion Pictures logo, this signalled the start of the film, an original 1984 35mm print of James Cameron's The Terminator. Right, Mark, just done a skip through much of the 4K, didn't watch too much of it, but enough to get a good idea, and then the 35mm. But first of all, what did you think of the new 4K disc of The Terminator?
Well, you can't argue, but the 4K was very, very good. You know, very presentable, good quality, clarity was excellent, sound was good, and the general Joe public would love it. Simple as that. And it's a great story, so what not to love about it?
I think you and I'd agree with that, Simon, wouldn't we?
I mean, after we did the Aliens one, it was clear that, you know, it is a very good representation, and if you've seen the film for the first time, you wouldn't know any different, would you?
I think you prefer the 4K if you saw that first.
Yeah. Maybe to a point of it being too good. That's the other.
But I suppose, though, that's the thing. Today, people expect it to be really top notch. They're not happy to have second best.
No.
So the manufacturers of creating all this material are looking for the best transfer they can to achieve it, to keep people happy. And somebody's going to knock it for some reason. But aren't we all saying also these days they're trying to literally, the clarity is trying to be too tight, too sharp, which in reality that's not what you see. You have soft images around us. We're not that sort of bright and sort of stand out from the background, where 35mm naturally is an analog format.
Yep.
And it does that as we expect to really see it. But then you look at the two comparison and people are going to get fooled thinking 4K's natural life, and it's not.
No.
Well, Ben did a few decades as a projectionist, including the Millennium Dome 70mm pairing. Ben, so what did you think looked better to your eyes,
well,
given
obviously
all that
for
experience?
a commercial point of view, 4K discs, I'm afraid, isn't a DCI industry standard recognised for exhibition. Although for home use, it's perfect. You know, as Mark says, it looks very clean, sharp. As perspective for film, it isn't the same feel. It feels very artificial. You know, it's bright, sharp. It looks too perfect to what you see normally in a sort of film division day today. So. Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, you can't order it.
Too perfect, perhaps.
It's too perfect.
Maybe that's what our eyes. Clinical. That's a good
I think
word.
the word is clinical. Yeah.
And I'd describe film as natural. Now, Steve, you had a complete lifetime even before you were in cinemas. You were in cinemas because of your father. So, what's your perception?
I've shown the film commercially to an audience, and compared to the 4K. The 4K is absolutely excellent, but it's as flat as a pancake. There's just no life in it.
And the movement,
like Ben said, it was clinical.
The movement's different as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it strobed like hell on it.
Yeah, and yet
the 35mm doesn't.
Something about the 35mm with the shutter, the film going through the gate, all that movement, and the light being dissipated over the screen by the film perhaps is giving it that more natural feel.
This is it.
But it feels more like real life to me, even though it's not as sharp as we see in real life.
Yeah, that's it. But on a big screen in a big cinema with an audience of 600 to 800 people, it's a totally different film. The 4K, like Ben said, is just too clinical and it's flat.
We talked about the way we're projecting it. The 4K is going through a laser projector. the 35mm is going through a halogen type or xenon lamp, there's going to be differences to the colour
temperature on it. Yeah.
I think that adds to the fact that it can look a bit more clinical on 4K, just the colour temperature. And of course the print itself is beginning to maybe show signs of its age, which can also add a little bit of coloration maybe to the print, all of which maybe adds to its natural look.
And that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because if you consider that now they were trying to pick and choose the best they could to create that 4K content. You have got a print which you don't know how many generation it is. So how good was it in its beginning? So there's that which we can't really judge against. But I found importantly that what we're looking at how the audience originally saw it. You know, and that's something which a 4K disc can never represent. You know, we're seeing it as they saw it. We're getting the same level of enjoyment. In fact, when we had to stop at one point, we went, I was getting into that. You know, and there is a depth to 35 which you didn't really understand or really you can't really quantify sometimes the difference between a 4K disc and a 35mm print. But there is something different. It's certainly analog compared to digital, and I felt that it has a freshness to it, a more flow, a natural flow to it, and I felt the sound was a bit more dynamic as well in 35.
How long has it been since you had a full house really of guests in your cinema, and particularly film enthusiast, film collector guests?
It does make it slightly more stressful knowing that I've got professionals here with me, no, I can't. Actually, this is quite unique, and I think, John, we've been planning it for a while, haven't we?
Yeah.
And I think word got out amongst our friends, and we got extra invitations, which has been great, and you know, been able to chat about collecting in general, about all the nuances of maintenance of equipment and the different pieces of equipment. It's great, and I guess it's the same in most collecting circles. You know, people who collect vintage cars or motorbikes or guitars or whatever. It's really nice being able to share thoughts and ideas and do a little bit of trading as well, which is nice.
And when was the last time you screened this print?
I think this print was screened maybe 4 years ago. I have got a note somewhere. I generally keep a little note when I screen things.
And do you find you're scrutinising it more this time because we're tending to do that?
Do you know what? I think as well, because of the advances in digital technology with 4K, the fact I've now got a 4K projector, and listening to people's reviews of 4K discs, it does make you look at the film a bit differently, and I'm seeing things that maybe I hadn't seen before. You know, some of the grain structures change slightly when you go indoors. Maybe there's a different film stock, or you know, the lower lighting enhances that, and I'd never have looked at that before.
No, we just accepted it, didn't we?
We did, and we didn't have a choice. You know, we couldn't go back and. Although I think amongst collectors, there are collectors who probably did want to search out the best quality prints, but for me it was a case of I just collected what I enjoyed, and I had no real understanding of how a print was made. I just assumed because it had been screened in the cinema it was the best possible quality that it could be, which wasn't strictly always true. So
right.
Do you feel though, after all that what we've seen here today, that really that film and digital can still live quite happily together. They're not really separate entities by any means, and that audiences do get attracted by that medium of going to see how their fathers, how their grandfathers used to watch it. Infinitely enjoyable in both methods, really.
Well, just recently in Christchurch in Dorset, they had a screening of the Lost Boys of the 80s culture for Dirt in the Gate movies, and it was almost 3/4 full on a Sunday evening. And because it was on film, people would go there because it's retro, and they want to see it on film.
I have to
And
say,
it's a brilliant atmosphere. Simon's been there himself.
I would travel across the country.
And they actually
to see
admitted
it.
now, I was talking to one of the trustees last year, that these 35mm screenings are more popular than the run-of-the-mill digital stuff they show for the kids on a Saturday morning.
Yeah, well, that's the same as steam locomotives.
Exactly.
No one wants to see them anymore.
Oh,
now the amount of heritage sites which have got them, and the amount of public who actually go to travel on them. You know, it's what goes around comes around.
Not just the heritage sites, the main line runnings.
When they do it, absolutely.
Yeah.
We could have done with a steam engine to get it, Mark. I think it was 220 miles.
It's been quicker.
The sound on this, I commented while it was running because we played the new Dolby mix on the 4K disc, and yes, it sounds great, but okay, we didn't go through all of it, but some of the 35mm mono sound, which everyone today who reviews or talks about 4K discs is rather disparaging of, in here it certainly sounded like stereo, and because of how it was filling the room,
It had a presence.
it was like surround sound. It filled the room. That was it. I was watching the Terminator.
Yeah.
I'd have sworn I was listening to some sort of stereo sound.
Sometimes with like Atmos and stuff, it can be a bit over the top.
Gimmicky.
The sound quality, a bit gimmicky, and
I
it
think
distracts you from what's going on the screen
Yeah.
and what's going behind you, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it seems to be
You know-
more range on that mono track on the 35mm.
Didn't it? You think,
So,
oh no,
I think
one
that's
thing
because-
we must remember to put in, because the disc has got the original mono track apparently, but I'll be surprised if it sounds as good as what we just heard on the 35mm, but I'll be happy to be proven wrong. So so we'll have to come back.
That's a challenge, yeah.
Have to come back and run that. But anyway, I think that brings us to the end of this section. Having watched Terminator on 35mm and had a first look at that 4K disc, both are excellent. But I think for me, I choose the 35mm because I just love film, and having sat here and watched it, I feel that it's just got a more natural, lifelike image. Is that, given that we're all film collectors of long standing, is that largely how we'd all feel?
Yeah, I would say so, but we don't have to detract that 4K still is a good presentation.
Oh, yes.
And therefore still
Yeah.
totally enjoyable. Not everybody's going to ever have something like that in their
Which is superb. Projection here.
and it's a way to enjoy
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
so that's good.
And
Yeah.
it takes a long time to get it ready properly.
No, I just turned up and it was
I bet she turned up.
Yeah.
What do you reckon, Steve? Last word.
I thought the 35mm was better. It had more life in it. I'd like to actually hear it run on a total analogue system, because he's using the CP650, so he's converting the analogue into digital, processing it, and then turning it back into analogue to the
I
speakers.
get what you mean.
Yeah.
It's so pure.
I'd
Yeah.
love to hear what it would sound like now, just as pure analogue.
And I reckon it'd probably be a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there you are, Simon. There's a job well worth. Right, we're just about to put the Terminator 4K disc on again, just to have a check of the mono sound to see if the mono sound on the disc does come up to that standard that we just enjoyed on the 35mm print. But a beautiful 35mm print, clearly had good use back in the day when it was on general release in 1984. But what an absolute treat to see the Terminator again as I saw it in the cinema in 1984. So anyway, just about to have a listen to the 4K mono sound, and let's see what we think of this. So we start with Simon. What was your impression of the mono sound compared to the 35?
I mean, it was good, but I thought it was slightly flatter somehow. And bearing in mind it was all going through the same speakers, the same processor, just thought it was a little bit flatter.
And what did you think, Ben?
I felt the same actually. It just didn't have this sort of warmth sound to it as opposed to an optical soundtrack in that particular film. And I didn't have a dynamic range, although it was loud, but it didn't have sort of range to it. I would have my feeling, but it's up to sort of individual hearing on the subject, really. Is
Yeah, it's the same with most things.
Yeah,
it's your own individual hearing. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Well, the words I would describe compared to the 35mm is the 4K was too harsh. It was too toppy for me, whereas the 35mm had this beautiful, subtle
warmth sound. I think it's I would say warmth.
Every detail was there, wasn't it? Whereas with the,
I think sometimes it's like comparing solid state amplifiers to valve amplifiers.
It's something to do with that. I think it's dynamic range, it's sort of frequency response. So obviously with digital, it's a lot higher, which we don't hear sort of very high frequencies anyway. Most people don't. So I think it hasn't got the same sort of bandwidth.
A bit more compression maybe.
Compression is another thing that can really affect it. Yeah.
Well, I suppose I should say that we're quickly recording this because Mark stepped out for a moment, so we thought we'd do this without him and then catch him out afterwards. I think it's been a thoroughly wonderful day going to your store and seeing all the films, and wonderful to be in your cinema again, and hopefully
superb. Yeah.
It's a pleasure having you guys with me, and
we
it's
hope
really
to do
nice
it again.
watching a film with you, looking at the same things as I sometimes look at, and maybe we can think about what other comparisons we can do.
Well, as you said, the 35mm to the Super 8, that would be interesting, because the Super 8 is surprisingly good, but you know, that's just something for another day. Right, that video turned out to be rather long, so as a result there's a couple of sequences that I didn't really want to cut much at all, but I had to cut them extensively, otherwise this would have gone on all night. So the sequence where Simon is assembling the print, that's quite a long sequence. It was something we planned and we wanted to put it up in full, so I'm going to upload that as a completely separate uncut video. That'll probably be a few days after this goes live, and then the full discussion with the five of us talking about what we'd just seen. But there was so much additional information there from the projectionist with us, so much experience there, so much great information, that I think that'll be valuable to actually get that one up uncut for anyone who's really interested in film and cinema. So that one will be a few days possibly after the assembly of the print, so watch out for those. Now, a couple of other things. Many of you know my love of IMAX, and here we are. This is a trailer, an IMAX trailer for Fantasia 2000 that Steve Rowley brought along for me, and it's made me remember that I wanted to give Kim's video a Bortec a plug. He actually got in to film the Cinerama, the 3-strip Cinerama at the Pictureville in Bradford, and it's a fabulous video. There may be some detail in there that won't make too much sense because it's the most complicated film format that ever saw the light of a screen, the light of a projector and a big screen, and has to just be seen to be believed. So that's something worth looking at, and maybe this year at the widescreen weekend up there, I think it's October every year, maybe I'll finally get up there. And the other thing, Killing Zoe at the Prince Charles Cinema in Leicester Square, March the 22nd, 5:45 p.m, that's a Saturday. I shall leave a link in the description below to go straight into the tickets, because I plan to be there, because this transfer, this Cine to Video scan, has been done by Peter Aldenmaz of Scanners Inc, and he's going to be coming over from Canada to introduce this. Anyone who knows Peter's work, he does these things quite differently, and he's done this scan of Killing Zoe from a print that originated somewhere in Europe, and Roger Avery is very pleased with the way it looks. That's the film's director, and for those that don't know, Quentin Tarantino was the executive producer. So I haven't seen the film. I want to see this 4K because I know Peter's work, and he produces film transfers that in here look like film. So I want to see if this holds up onto a DCP, which should be even better, but onto the really big screen they've got at the Prince Charles. So I think that's going to be worth getting to. It's certainly going to be an exercise worth seeing, and I'm looking forward to meeting Peter, hopefully getting him on camera and talking to him about what he's got in mind for the work that he's doing besides getting the odd DCP on in cinemas. So I think that finally brings us to the end of this one. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, perhaps subscribe if you haven't already, and until the next video, bye bye for now.